Before I begin the message, I just want to also extend my appreciation to all our veterans here this morning and their families. I didn't grow up in America. I came to this nation. My family did not invest in this nation's history or the present or the future. So I'm personally grateful to all of you for the sacrifices you make. Sometimes when you talk to veterans, they'll say, oh, it's not a big deal, or just a couple of years. But you went with the potential of not coming home. And that's a big deal. And so I am grateful. Thank you to each and every one of you and your families as well. Now, years ago, when we lived on the other side of the town, in this community, by the way, in the church parsonage, unbeknownst to me, Nicole lost one of her golden earrings. Now, ladies, you know how particular you are about your jewelry, especially earrings. She lost it. But she didn't tell me because they were not just any ordinary earrings. They were very special, given to her by my own mom. So it was back in 2000 when we went to visit our family. She was given these 24-karat golden earrings and many other things. And unfortunately, she lost it, but she didn't tell me because she thought I was going to be disappointed or hurt or whatever. But one day, as I was walking back from the mailbox in the driveway, I noticed this little golden thing just gleaming in the sunlight, and I dug it up, and sure enough, it was a golden earring. So I walked back in the house. I said, Nicole, you must have lost this. He said, oh my goodness, I lost that years ago. So 2000, we went to visit family. It was probably a year after that she lost it. This was about 2006, 2007. So we've been driving on that driveway. We've been walking on that driveway all those years, and maybe the gravel shifted or the rain washed away the dirt, whatever it was, there it sat. All I had to do was take that earring up, wash it under the sink, and it's really malleable because 24 karat is very soft, and she put it back together and put it on. Perfect as anything. Now, this morning, in this series on apologetics, we're going to the story of Abraham and Sarah. We're kind of jumping away from the Tower of Babel, but please know, after Christmas, we're going to come back to it. The story of Abraham and Sarah kind of leads us into the Christmas season. Again, Ryan is not lying when he says they start playing Christmas music, at least in my home, in August. That's too much. But Nicole will start, and Ryan is just right behind her as well. But anyways, this series called Man of Promise is going to lead us into the Christmas season. And we'll pick back up on the Tower of Babel after Christmas. You have your Bibles? Go ahead and find Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1. The main point of today's message, as you're looking for Genesis chapter 12, first book in the Bible, verse 1, the coming of Jesus was not some random event 2,000 years ago. It was promised. It was expected. And it was opposed by the enemy throughout history. Satan tried everything possible to sabotage the promise of the coming of Jesus. And just like that golden earring, at times it lay buried under the sands of time, almost as if God had forgotten. But then at the right time, at the right moment, God would pick it up and give it to the person, just like Abraham and Sarah, and then going down the history to Mary, in the fullness of time, Jesus came. So Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, when we read this passage without knowing the context, without understanding the history and a message like this, we tend to think that Abraham was just going about his life, minding his own business, And God came out of nowhere and told him, uproot your life in the Ur of the Chaldees and go to a place I will show you. Just go. And Abraham and Sarah kind of, went on this caravan looking for that place. That God's promise were just some generalized statements like, just go and I'll bless you. And you will be a blessing. And through you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. There's nothing particular about it. It's just a family trying to obey God and be blessed. In today's message, you're going to learn that's not the case. In fact, the promise of the coming of the seed was expected and even opposed by the enemy throughout history. So this morning, let's begin in the Garden of Eden. I'm going to recap the history of the coming of Jesus from the garden only till Abraham and Sarah. We don't have time to go all the way to Mary today. But from the garden to Abraham and Sarah. What happened in the garden? 2 trees in the garden. God told Adam and Eve, you can have everything except for that one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat of it. In the day you eat, you shall surely die. Of course, Satan came slithering in, deceived the woman. She ate, gave it to her husband with her, and he also ate, and their eyes were opened, and sin came in. Original sin was born. God came, called for them, they were hidden, and when they came out, God pronounced his judgment on Adam, Eve, and the serpent. Now, we don't have time to look at all of that. I preached on that before. But in today's message, we're going to begin by focusing on Genesis 3:15, the judgment against the serpent. What did God say to him? Listen to verse 15, Genesis 3. God said, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now, we sort of read it rapidly, but if you really pay attention, there are 3 things happening there. The first is, from now on, there's going to be enmity between the serpent and the woman. All over the world, women hate snakes. Now, I've met a few women who like snakes. Not sure what's wrong with them, but as a whole, throughout the world, women do not like snakes. Men don't like snakes either. But when you look at it overall, women hate snakes. Where did this enmity begin? It began in the garden. When God pronounced that judgment, from now on, you will hate each other. But wait, here's a second enmity. This is going to be between your seed, Satan's seed, and her seed. Now, what you don't see in the English is that the word for seed can also be plural. English doesn't carry that, so we tend to think, oh, it's just her seed, yours. No, it's her seeds and his seeds. Means from now on, there's going to be this war, this enmity between the descendants of Satan and the descendants of the woman. And of course, the third line, he shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. The his is singular, so here's the third enmity between a one particular person who will be the seed of the woman and one particular person who will be the seed of the serpent, or serpent himself. Of course, we're talking about Jesus. Of course, we're talking about Satan and ultimately the Antichrist. But I'm going to leave that alone and focus on the middle one, which is the descendants of Satan will be against the descendants of the woman. Now, don't misunderstand. These descendants will not be biological. They will be ideological. Means it's not like Satan is going to have children and the woman is going to have children. Of course they will, she will, but it's more ideological in their behavior, in their way of thinking. They will hate each other. Or at least the descendants of Satan will hate the descendants of the woman. Starting with Cain and Abel. In this first family, something happened. Something very sad, something very tragic. But let's back up for a moment and think about what was happening. Eve had a son. Now, Eve did not know which son will be the one who will bruise the head of the serpent. She just knew that God had said this, and she is pregnant. So in Genesis 4:1, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. But pay attention to what she says. She said, I have acquired a ish from the Lord. Ish in Hebrew means a man. It means a male. Ladies, y'all have had babies and boys. Did you look at your little baby boy and said, look at this man? More than likely, no. You probably said he's going to grow up to be a man, but you'll say, oh, look at this little baby. Oh, how sweet, how cute, how beautiful, how tiny. You won't say, look at this man. When Eve saw her son Cain, she said, I have got a man. You know what she's saying? Finally, the seed has come who will bruise the head of the serpent. He will pay him for what he did to me. That's what's being said here. Unfortunately, Cain would not be the one. He would not be the man of promise. See, that's the title of our series, Man of Promise, because she's thinking, I've got the man of promise. Here he is. What happened between Cain and Abel? If you remember, they both brought their offerings to the Lord, but God accepted Abel's offering, a blood sacrifice. He rejected Cain's offering. Instead of dealing with that and saying, God, I'll make it right, something happened in Cain's heart. Envy came in. Listen to what God said to Cain. As Cain is going over this, he is fuming, he is seething. In Genesis 4:7, God said to him, Cain, I know what's going on in your mind. Verse 7, and if you do not do well, what's the word? Sin. Sin lies at the door, and his desire is for you. But listen, Cain, you should rule over it. You should master it. Let me set aside the message for a moment and just talk to you for about 2 minutes. You have a choice. We have a lot of people who tend to believe, maybe it's the theological system, maybe it's just how they grew up or the preaching they heard. They think that I don't have a choice. I've just been locked into this. And sometimes they even punt it to God and say, God, I'm going to do this sin, but you got to get me out of this. I can't do it. I'm going to keep doing this until you get me out. Listen very carefully. Let the scripture speak. You have a choice. Sin lies at the door, but you should rule over it. Amen. Which means this, men, pay attention here. This is not a time for you to look here and there. I'm very serious about it because it burdens my heart. Because a lot of sin is committed, all under the guise of I couldn't help it. You have a choice to shut down that phone, that computer screen, and walk away. Amen. You don't need to look at pornography. You have absolutely no reason in the world to keep scrolling. You have no reason in the world to say, I just want to know. Man, sometimes it just gets me when people, no, you don't have any reason. No justification. You don't have to know everything that's happening everywhere in everybody's life. You can put that phone away and it's just fine. Can I go one step further, ladies? Because this is a very crazy world in which we live. Pornography is not only affecting men, but it's also affecting women. You say, well, that's not, soft porn is still porn. Amen. And what I'm saying to you this morning is you have a choice. You have a choice to say, no, I can't go there. This is not a good place. I have to stop this. And if you have to delete those accounts, delete those accounts. The world will still go on. Let me talk about something else. It's not just pornography that plagues men and women, but other sins like envy. You see somebody doing well, immediately that seed begins to grow that says, why them and not me? Hey, listen, there's only one way to deal with that, and that is to say, God, you bless them, keep blessing them, keep blessing them, keep prospering them, protect them. In the process, God, if something's left over, give them to me too. But if you say, and you start out with, You can do everything right, but sometimes, you know how that goes. Some people, they're just lucky. Now that seed is being watered, it's going to grow up, and it's going to bear fruit that will destroy not only you, but your children. You have a choice at that moment to say, no, we're not going there. Anger, bitterness, greed. I can go on and on. You have a choice. There was a choice, but he chose to be, listen this morning, he chose to be in the line of the serpent. And as the Bible tells us, he rose up in the field and he killed his own brother. Listen to what Jesus said about this. When the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders were opposing him, in John chapter 8, verse 44, listen to what Jesus said. He said to them, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. What he's saying to them is, this is what Satan did. By the way, this morning we're talking about the enemy, right? I don't want to just stand here and be flamboyant and hit it out of the park, because Satan is very powerful. As I'm speaking this morning, would you pray for me? See, some of y'all didn't get it. Would you pray for me? Because I need prayer. As I'm praying, as I'm preaching to you, I need prayer back, because when you begin to talk about the enemy, if he is capable of doing this, what else is he capable of doing? Our battle is not fake. It is a real battle, albeit it's spiritual. We don't battle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. It's a real battle. Pray for me as I'm preaching this morning. So now what happens? Jesus exposes him, calls him a liar and the father of it. But moving along, going back to Eve for a moment, Cain has now moved away. Abel is dead. Maybe she had other sons, but when Seth was born, she felt, again, this is the one. Listen to Genesis chapter 4:25. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. And she said this, for God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed, because she was thinking Abel is going to bruise the serpent. Well, he's dead. Cain went rogue. Maybe Seth's the one, but you and I know it wasn't Seth. I can just picture in my mind, I can just imagine Eve on her deathbed, right? She lived for hundreds of years. Eve on her deathbed wondering, what happened? I was supposed to have the man who was going to bruise the serpent and reverse the curse and pay him back for what he did to me. But as I look, it's not happening. In fact, the world is getting worse and worse. I can just imagine the pain, the discouragement in her eyes, knowing that she did not give birth to that seed. But you know what happened? I'm kind of deviating from my message for a moment. Every woman from the Garden of Eden, after Eve, every woman was to raise her child, especially the male child, as if he could be the one who would break the curse. In our culture today, motherhood is looked down upon. It's like, it interferes with my lifestyle or interferes with my success and all that, and that's fine. My mom was a principal, and so I don't believe in, women cannot do those things. Great, it's wonderful when they can. But motherhood is something very, very special. From the Garden of Eden, every woman was to raise her child or children as if he would be the one who would bruise the serpent. Now we find a hint of that in 1 Timothy. Very quickly, 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 14. Paul makes a statement that if we don't pay attention to that, it can lead us to wrong thinking. 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 14. He says, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. Nevertheless, listen to what he says. She will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with self-control. She will be saved in childbearing. What does that mean? Does it mean that men get saved by coming to Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross, and women get saved by having children? You know what it means is what goes back to Genesis, that one of them will give birth to the one who will save humanity. Everybody understand that? Every one of them were to raise the children. And even though Jesus has already come and the promise has been fulfilled, the promise of coming has been done, you still have the same mandate, ladies, to raise your children to be skull crushers. Those who will fight against the enemy. But let's keep moving. You have two lines now. Descendants of the serpent and descendants of Eve. Unfortunately, Cain killed his own brother. Line goes on. And then in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, Satan knows something else has to be done. What has to be done? Somehow this seed is still coming. So Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, it says, there were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. I preached a message on this back in the summer. Many of y'all remember that domain. The title was Domain. What really happened here? Scholars and theologians try to do hermeneutical gymnastics to explain this, and they say, oh, it's the line of Seth. Oh, it's the line of the royal kings. No, if you read the book of Job, 2 Peter, Jude, and even 1 Enoch that is behind 2 Peter and Jude, is exactly what it's saying. The fallen angels infiltrated the human realm. And they didn't go after the sons of men. They went to the daughters of men. Why do you think the angels went after the daughters? Because it's through the seed of the woman, not the man. It's the seed of the woman who was going to bruise and ultimately crush the head of the serpent. And so they infiltrated the human realm. Why? So they can corrupt the seed. How bad did it get? Listen to Genesis 6:5. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth. He was grieved in his heart, and the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made man. Here's what I want you to understand. When Satan infiltrated the human realm, original sin began here. But here, it went off the deep end. There is not a single sin that we are plagued with in this world today. You name it. Sexual sin, violent sin, every kind of sin, deep sins, they all began right here. And what is God's plan? Got to destroy all this. There was only one man. There was only one family that was in the line of the seed of the woman that had not been, listen carefully, corrupted by the fallen angels. Who was it? Noah. Listen to what it says in Genesis chapter 6, verse 8. It says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. In verse 13, and God said to Noah, as you know this passage very well, I preached on this back in the summer, the end of all flesh has come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark. And you know Noah built that ark, took his family in it. God made a covenant with him. He also took the animals 2 by 2, means everything is going. The seed of the serpent has completely covered the earth. Noah, you're the only one. And they were in the ark almost a year until God poured down his wrath against those who were trying to corrupt the seed. And then when Noah and his family came out of the ark, what did God say? Listen to Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. It says, so God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The same thing God said to Adam and Eve. Remember what God said to them in the garden? Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. Means once again, the seed of the woman is coming. Go spread it. You see, the wicked fallen angels had infested humanity to such an extent that God sent a global flood. But one family remained of the seed of the woman. But now let's jump over. Our time is very short. We come to Abraham. You know, we tend to think that this couple was just wandering about, not sure what God was doing. They knew what God was doing. In this series, not just today, but in this series, I'm going to explain to you how Abraham and Sarah knew what was happening, albeit they were slightly mistaken. How many of y'all remember what Abraham said to his wife when they left Ur? He said, everywhere we go, tell people that you are my sister. Technically, he was right, half-sister. But why do you think he did that? Why was he doing that? He was doing that because he was thinking, this promise is to me, that through my seed, wait a minute, Abraham, have you read Genesis 3:15? It's not the seed of the man, it's the seed of the, well, you see, men sometimes are hard-headed, right? They don't pay attention. He didn't think. So what he is thinking is this: if we go somewhere, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful, and somebody sees you like a king or a pharaoh, hey, listen, go ahead and marry him, and you live happily ever after. I'm going to keep going until I find somebody else, maybe a wife, maybe a concubine, and she will give birth to a child, and I will have the seed of the promise. What a huge mistake. There's a famine in the land. Abraham and Sarah go to Egypt, and they're in Egypt. By the way, when Nicole and I were in Egypt back in March, April, everywhere we went, in the tombs, on the hieroglyphs, you see snakes. In fact, the goddess Vejet, which I'm going to explain in the weeks ahead, so don't miss the series. Everywhere you find the snake, even on Pharaoh's mitre, even on his crown, even on Tutankhamun's crown, there's a snake and a vulture, but snake is prominent. Even on his throne, his armrests are actually snakes. It's known as Uraeus. Now think with me, how many of you are still awake? You are carrying the seed who is going to crush the head of the serpent. And guess where Abraham takes his wife? Right into Satan's kingdom. Wait. It gets even worse. And he gives her over to Satan. There's a lot of lessons here. We can be here for like 4 or 5 hours, but we got to eat. Some of you men don't do your job as a spiritual leader of your home. I know you're like, oh, here we go again. But because of that, you literally lead your wife. She wants you to lead her in godliness. So, God had to plague Egypt. The Exodus plagues were not the first time he plagued Egypt. He had to plague Egypt in Genesis. And finally the Pharaoh said, what's wrong with you? Why did you do this? So they left Egypt, but not before they took somebody with them. Who did they take with them? This young Egyptian girl by the name of Hagar. You know, here's the thing. Every step of the way, God is sort of bruising the head of the serpent, like he did with Abraham and Sarah in Egypt. But you know, bruising the head doesn't mean the snake is dead. What's the snake going to do? He still slithers back in. You have to crush the head. You can't just step on the tail or the body. You have to actually crush the head completely, and that's when he's done. So Even though they left Egypt, he said, here you go, take Hagar. And guess what? Sarah gave Hagar to her husband, an Egyptian maid, which means coming from the kingdom of the serpent. How cunning and how shrewd is the enemy? And Abraham went ahead with that and had Ishmael and said, God, maybe this is the one. God said, no. And Sarah's like, it's time for Hagar to go. And he's like, no, but I'm just loving kind of guy. And God says, listen to your wife. It's the seed of the promise that is in jeopardy. Unfortunately, Abraham is 99, Sarah is 89. She's still a gorgeous woman. And another king by the name of Abimelech looks at her, and Abraham says, yeah, that's right, she's my sister. You can have her if you want. How many times is the plan in jeopardy? And God had to come and deal with Abimelech, and he said, what's the matter with you, man? Why do you keep doing this to your wife? You see, there's a slight glitch in Abraham's understanding. He thinks is the seed of the man. He knows what's happening. He is protecting God's plan, except that God's plan is Sarah, not him. And then finally, when they hit 100, he hits 100, and Sarah hits 90, a child is born. Jesus had something to say about this. The question people ask me is this: are you sure Abraham knew what was happening? Abraham knew from the get-go when God said, leave your country and go to the land, albeit he thought it was going to be his seed. I believe it was not until he was on Mount Moriah when God said, take your son, your only son whom you love, and sacrifice him. And when God stopped Abraham and said, take that ram, I believe that's when it hit him. Oh, it's the seed of the woman. Now, Jesus said something very quickly in John chapter 8. I want to give you the time to find that passage. John chapter 8 and verse 53. John chapter 8 and verse 53. To give you the context as you're finding this passage in the New Testament, the Pharisees and the scribes were accusing Jesus of blasphemy. And they were claiming that we are the seed of Abraham. What did Jesus tell them? No, you are the seed of the serpent. Isn't that amazing? The same old battle lines, the seed of the woman, the seed of the serpent. They keep claiming, oh, we are the seed of Abraham. He said, no, you're the seed of the devil, your father, the devil. By the way, Jesus did not say that to the multitudes that were hungry. He said that to the religious leaders. But let's go back to John 8:53. They said to Jesus, are you greater than our father Abraham, who is dead? And the prophets are dead. Who do you make yourself out to be? Verse 56, Jesus said, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. Listen, Abraham saw the day of Jesus the day he left Ur. He just had a little misunderstanding. And then throughout his journey, God kept getting him back online. It's not you, it's Sarah. It's not you, it's Sarah. It's not you, it's Sarah. And then on Mount Moriah, he finally saw it. Oh, it's Sarah. And he saw the day of Jesus coming. Means this couple was not that clueless. They knew the promise was going to be a seed. It took them a while to understand it was going to be her seed. But listen to what Jesus said. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old. I mean, they just don't get it, do they? And have you seen Abraham? Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. What is their response? They took up stones to throw at him. We got to kill you. Who does that? Who is the murderer from the beginning? Satan. They were fulfilling the promise that the seed of the serpent will always hate the seed of the woman. Now, I don't have time to go through all the way from Abraham and Sarah to the coming of Jesus 2,000 years ago. Throughout this journey, Satan tried to destroy the seed. What happened to the God's people, the Hebrews in Egypt? They were put into slavery. Satan was trying to kill them. What happened in the exiles? Satan tried to kill them. What happened in Babylon? Once again, God had to protect them and bring them back into the land. And in the fullness of time, in this little village called Nazareth, this young girl who is going about her life, an angel comes to her and says, "You have found favor with God." Ladies, young girls, teenagers, how would you respond if an angel showed up and said, "You know that old promise about the seed of the woman? You're it." By the way, I don't have time to get into all the detail. Even the name Nazareth, Netzer, is talking about the seed. People went to that town and lived there. They were a part of a priestly lineage who were waiting for the coming one. So this was not some random girl anywhere in Palestine that God picked. No, this was a very specific promise. And her response, you can imagine, she's scared. Are you telling me? Keep in mind, Mary's lineage goes back through the priests and the Levites, back to David, all the way to Abraham. You mean to tell me I'm the one who is the carrier of the promise? Nonetheless, she submitted herself to God. What did she say? "Whatever you will." Now listen to Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, how many times is Scripture saying this is not going to have any involvement of the man? She was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. Just like in Abraham, what is he doing? I'm just going to put her away. Now, in a culture of high Pharisaism, what do you think they would do to this young Jewish girl who was pregnant? What do you think they would do? They would stone her. They would stone not only her, but what's going to happen? The baby is going to die. The plan is in jeopardy again. No prophet, no mentor, no family member can intervene this time. What did God do to stop Joseph? What did God do? Help me out. He sent an angel. God's like, go down and stop that idiot. But he's about to break the engagement. He doesn't get it. And so here comes the angel. Listen to what he says to Joseph. While he thought about these things, verse 20, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David. Why son of David? Because don't you know it's through your line? Do not be afraid to take to you Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. So all this was done, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Who's the prophet? Isaiah. I don't have time again to go through all this. Isaiah was about 800 years before the coming of Christ. And he gave this prophecy. Behold, a virgin shall be with child. What did we say? Behold, the virgin is the seed of the woman, no interaction with the man. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear, not a daughter, but so a woman will give birth, but it's going to be a son who will crush the head. And they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. The skull crusher has arrived. You know, when Jesus was heading to the cross, what Satan was thinking is, I finally got him. We tried throughout history to find the one, tried to corrupt the entire human race, tried to destroy the Jewish people, and it did not work. Here it is, my golden opportunity. Satan entered even in one of Jesus' own disciples, right? Judas was filled with the devil, who betrayed his master. I got him. And then when Jesus died on the cross, they took his body and put it in the grave. What is Satan thinking? Put a seal on it. He cannot come back. But on the third day, he rose again. You know what happened in that rising again? That heel came up. It didn't crush the head of the serpent, but it bruised it. Now, I want you to understand that, because we tend to say, oh, Jesus crushed the head of the serpent. No, he bruised it. That's why Satan is still alive and well in this world. He is still slithering around, and he's after your marriage. He's after your children. He's after your testimony. He's after churches. He's after this nation. He is doing everything he can. He knows his time is limited, so he is doing whatever he can to still take as many people as he can with him. The battle began here. Even though Jesus won the battle, it's still not over. This morning, I want you to understand that Satan is still alive. And that's why Paul says in Romans chapter 16, verse 19, he said, I want you to be wise in what is good and simple concerning evil. There's so much there I can't get into right now. But pay attention to verse 20. And the God of peace will crush Satan under your feet shortly. Means not yet. It is still coming. A lot of times people walk around and in certain theologies and churches talk about, I'm going to stomp the devil and this and that. If you watch their lives carefully, usually the devil is stomping them. Don't underestimate the power of the bruised serpent. This church, this pastor, I believe that we do our battle standing behind Christ. We submit to God, we resist the devil, that's when he flees from us. It's not by directly having a conversation with him and telling him this and rebuking him there. We don't do that. We submit to God, we resist the enemy, and that's when he flees from us, and ultimately he will be crushed. Daily we put on the armor of God. And we stand. And when will this happen ultimately? It'll begin in the end times. Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. Listen to what it says. By the way, this is a powerful verse that pretty much summarizes everything here. Revelation 12:9. So, the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Again, this is not the final end, but now he has been completely exposed, and the heel is getting crosshairs over him to be destroyed. And that's the lake of fire. This morning, when you think about history, people go to college and take a couple of classes in history and they're experts, right? All you got to do is watch a couple of videos and read a bestseller and you're an expert. No, when you really study the Bible carefully, taking the context and taking even world history into account, you begin to realize it's really a battle between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. That golden earring lay in that dirt for years. The promise was buried at times for centuries. But in the fullness of time, God picked up that golden ring and gave it to Mary and said, "You're it." and Jesus was born. There is no greater story than the story of the coming of the seed of the woman. And the work is not done. It keeps going through us. And ultimately, one day, He will complete it. If you're here this morning and you are somewhere in the middle, I'm not quite sure, I have questions, or you don't know me, and I'm the intellectual, and I'll get a lot of that intellectual type. Really? Really? A couple of books and a YouTube video made you an expert? Come on, folks. When you die, none of that's going to matter. What's going to matter is whether you expressly ask Jesus to be your Savior and King. None of this sitting on the fence and sometimes I'm here and sometimes I'm there and no. You have to choose. And choose you this day, Jesus Christ. Today is a day for you to pray. I think many of y'all have prayed stuff and it didn't work because you were wishy-washy. Today, I think somebody here needs to pray. Some young person, some boy, some girl, some senior adult needs to pray. Jesus, today I'm asking you to come into my heart. Forgive me of my sins and take over. I want you to be my Savior and my Lord, my King. Now you are in the line of the seed of the woman. Remember, Satan deceives. Many of you have been deceived into thinking you are here when actually you're there. I'm not here to doubt your salvation. What would you rather do? Go through your whole life sitting on the fence? Or today's the day? And this morning, never given your heart to Christ, do that. You know somebody who's struggling, pray for them. Satan is trying to slither back into your life, into your home. Some of you are too self-confident that we got this. We're good. No. Even I'm standing here, these 30 minutes, I finished because you prayed for me. You prayed for me. The battle is real. The history is real. Jesus is real. Would you stand together?